Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And in today's video, I'm going to give my top 10 most important players for Texas Tech football in 2023. The season is fast approaching, about 6 weeks away from kickoff up in Laramie, Wyoming, 7 weeks away from that primetime matchup against Bo Nix and the Oregon Ducks, and Tyler Shough going up against his old club, right? But let's give the top 10 most important players for Texas Tech for them to have success in 2023. Now, I want to preface everything that I'm about to say in today's video by saying this. This is my opinion. I think some of these guys are more important than others. Obviously, that's just how the team aspect goes. But when you look at what Texas Tech needs to be successful, there are some certain guys that have to elevate their play or sustain the level of play that they've shown in the past. But before we get into my top 10, starting at number 10, let me know. You liking the new graphics? I'm trying some things out before football season. I want to get y'all's opinion. What do we think of the background? What do we think of the watch the previous videos, the subscribe, the channel logo right there? Let me know down in the comments below by simply, telling me if you like them, and go ahead and like that video too if you do like the new graphics. All right, let's jump into it at number 10, and it's a new guy taking over some big shoes in the Texas Tech secondary, and it is CJ Baskerville, the San Diego State transfer. The Texas native comes back to the Lone Star State, and he is taking over that star position for Muddy Waters. And listen, I don't think people truly understand how good of a year Muddy Waters had last year. It was a crime that this man did not at least get 6th round, 7th round draft grades and get drafted there, right? He was an integral part of this Texas Tech defense in the bend, don't break mentality that they had last year. Again, remember, Texas Tech had the 9th best red zone defense in the entire country, right? You could beat them between the 20s, but once they got into the 20 in the red zone, listen, they became really stingy, and now CJ Baskerville is taking over for Muddy Waters. And really the biggest question mark I have for CJ Baskerville is how quick can he transition from the Mountain West to the Big 12? I think it'll be pretty seamless. I love this guy on tape. He is a ball hawk. He is a guy that is not afraid to go and get dirty in terms of his shoulder pads in the run game, move sideline to sideline, be that center fielder. He's a do-it-all safety. I'm just interested to see how seamless that transition is in real game action for CJ Baskerville since he's taken over such a meaningful position. And listen, he's not the only guy in the secondary that I have on here, but we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. The next one, I'll admit I cheated a little bit, but I put Myles Cole and Steve Linton. The reason they're not higher is because I've got two other guys on the defensive line that I think really, let's face it, are more important than the outside pass rushers for the Red Raiders. But talking about Steve Linton, and Myles Cole, it's as simple as this. Who's going to step up to replace Tyree Wilson? And I'm not crazy, and neither should you be, in the sense of no one person is going to be Tyree Wilson. It's more of a group collective effort. Obviously, Myles Cole and Steve Linton are the big names right now that everybody's talking about, but there's guys like Joseph Adedire as well, right? There's guys and talent in this edge and outside linebacker room for the Red Raiders that can get to the pass rusher. Get to the passer, It's just how many of them is it going to take? And I think it really starts with these two guys in Myles Cole and Steve Linton. Next, we head back to the offensive side of the football, and it's Jerron Bradley. I mean, he's the wide receiver one for you. Every time you hear Tyler Shough talk about Jerron Bradley, it's glowingly, right? Simple and plain. Everything is good about him. And to be honest with you, I think he's an all Big 12 type receiver, right? He makes things easier for every other wide receiver in that room for Texas Tech. Now, I could have put Dre McCray on here because he opens things up, even Miles Price, Loic Fouonji, but Bradley, in my opinion, has a chance to be one of those wide receivers that we talk about for a long time in Texas Tech lore with his skill set. Big frame, doesn't really beat you in terms of the speed, even though he's not the slowest guy, runs about a 4.5, right? He's got great hands, can go up and high point the ball, back shoulder type guy, and I think he's a perfect wide receiver for Tyler Shough. I think he's in for a big year, and I think he's the most important wide receiver Texas Tech has in an offense that I think will take a monumental step forward in year 2 under Zach Kittley. All right, speaking of the offense, we transition to the offensive line, and we're going to talk about two Western Kentucky guys. But the first one I'm going to talk about comes in at the number 7 spot, and it's the center in Rusty Stats. Again, the center position is the quarterback position of the offensive line. He's the one that communicates everything to the offensive line in terms of, hey, this guy's going in the A gap, B gap, whatever it may be, shouts out the number, the coverages, and everything like that. The best part about Rusty Stats is, first and foremost, he's a great player. But second of all, the transition to learn the terminology of a Zach Kittley offense will be almost seamless for him since, well, he's already played in a Zach Kittley offense, right, at Western Kentucky. So I'm really interested to see how this all goes because I think he has all Big 12 type potential on the offensive line. Now, will it come to fruition? I don't know. Maybe it's just an honorable mention type deal. But when you look at what he has done in the Zach Kittley offense, he's been phenomenal, right? And he is a good center. It's just, again, you're coming from Western Kentucky, Conference USA to the Big 12. How is that transition in terms of the competition? All right. At number 6, we've got Tony Bradford Jr. We'll talk about his running mate and sidekick here in just a little bit. But Tony Bradford Jr., just like Jalen Hutchins, listen, they're the anchors of the defensive line. And Tony Bradford is more of that guy that is the muck it up type guy where he's the guy that gets the doubles so the Jalen Hutchins of the world can get to the passer. The guys like Steve Linton, Miles Cole can get to the passer easily in terms of, hey, they have a better situation in terms of a matchup, whether it's a double or a single type matchup, but more often than not, it's just going to be one-on-one, right? His experience is a big-time deal for this defensive line for Texas Tech, and him coming back is monumental, right? And I think that he is the guy that really helps alleviate some of the pressure in terms of guys getting to the passer because of his skill set in the run game, too. He's really good in the run game as well. All right, then you got Rabbit at number 5, free safety. Listen, he's the leader of the Texas Tech secondary. Simple and plain. He's a Mr. Do-It-All guy. Had 74 tackles last year, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and fumble recoveries. Listen, he's the guy that makes the Texas Tech secondary go. It's that simple. He's going to be the leader of that group for Texas Tech. You got a lot of experience back there, but don't get it twisted. Rabbit is the guy when it comes down to making sure everybody's in the proper spot, making sure the terminology's right, and making sure everybody knows their role and what's going on in respective coverages. So really interested to see how that maturation process works for Rabbit. Again, super senior guy. You got a lot of experience back there. Crazy enough, if you think about it, the projected starting secondary right now, the youngest guy is CJ Baskerville, and he's going to be a junior. Okay, you got Rashad Williams on one side, Malik Dunlap, and then you've got Tyler Owens. You obviously got Rabbit, and then CJ Baskerville in that secondary. Also, you've got McCarty, you got Lux, Fresno State, Lux, Baylor, McCarty, and you've got a couple of guys back there that could be potentially impact players as young guys in terms of the true freshmen and sophomores as well. Arguably the most impactful transition in terms of a position this offseason for Texas Tech was Josiah Pierre from outside linebacker to middle linebacker Mike, right? And the biggest reason why is this experience, simple and plain. He is vitally important to the Red Raiders next year because of the simple fact that he has played not only in the SEC, but the Big 12. And when you look at other guys in the linebacking room for the Red Raiders, there's not a lot of experience. There is some talent, quite a bit of talent, if we're being honest about it, in Jacob Rodriguez and Ty Canna, right? But they just don't have that experience of real in-game experience playing in the Big 12. Insert Josiah Pierre, who will be calling out the plays. This is his second year in a Tim DeRuyter defense. He knows how to call out plays. He is a good linebacker that can go sideline to sideline. He obviously knows and has spent quite a bit of time in his college career in the backfield, whether that's in the run game or getting to the passer. He is going to be a vital part to the Texas Tech defense and arguably the most important player for Texas Tech there in the sense of that transition and making sure that those linebackers like Isaac Smith and Ty Canna, Jacob Rodriguez all feel a little bit more comfortable for the Red Raiders. All right, we transition into our top 3. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long. We're giving you daily videos all throughout the offseason. And, hey, we might even have an interview here with a Texas Tech basketball player, a former one at that, talking about the TBT here on the channel. tomorrow. But be sure to subscribe, stay in the know on Texas Tech athletics all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, transitioning to number 3. And if you haven't already, let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of my choices down there in terms of these top 10 most important players for Texas Tech in this coming up season. It's the guy in the middle. It's Jalen Hutchins, right? Him and Tony Bradford coming back could not be understated in terms of its importance for the Texas Tech defense. He's pivotal, right? Much like Williams, Hutchins and his skill set allow others to flourish in a less pressure-packed role, right? And what I mean by that is they won't have to face as many doubles. I talked about that with Tony Bradford. I think Jalen Hutchins can get after the quarterback a little bit more, really impact things in terms of the tackles for loss, sacks, and everything. Even though the sack numbers won't wow you, it's pretty solid for a nose tackle, right? I think Jalen Hutchins is arguably the most important player on the defensive side of the football for Texas Tech. It's either him or Josiah Pierre, in my opinion, just because of that experience aspect at the linebacker position for the Red Raiders. But when it comes to importance in terms of being disruptive, I think Jalen Hutchins, in my opinion, is the most important guy for this Texas Tech defense because he impacts all 3 levels of the defense. Because if he can get into the backfield and disrupt things, that impacts the linebackers, that impacts the Texas Tech secondary, both in a positive note. All right, at number 2, Cole Spencer. Joey McGuire himself said this is Texas Tech's best offensive lineman. He's healthy now. He had a medical redshirt last year after transferring in from Western Kentucky after playing for Zach Kittley. He's an all Big 12 type guy when it comes to this offensive line. And the thing for me that really stands out, the additions of him and Rusty Stats this year allow guys to get into a better, proper position in terms of their skill set on the offensive line. You flip the tackles. You got Monroe Mills on the left side. Now you got Caleb Rogers on the right. You scoot Dennis Wilburn, from the center to the right guard. Now you got Rusty Stats at center. And then you got Cole Spencer at left guard. He is one of the most impactful offensive linemen in the Big 12. Simple and plain. Former All-American, right? He is a guy that has a legit chance to be an all-Big 12 offensive lineman and a guy that we haven't seen at this type of level really since Jack Anderson on the Texas Tech offensive line. At number 1, this is pretty obvious, I think, right? It's Tyler Shough, right? Simple and plain. He's 8-0 as a starter in games he started and finished as a Red Raider, 8-1 in games that he's actually played in at any point, right? Second year in Zach Kittley's offense, this first time in his college career that he's had the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years, right? And this almost feels like a make-or-break type season for Tyler Shough in terms of his NFL future. There were websites that had him as a top 10 pick at some points, right? All the tools are there. He's just been crippled by injury luck. I think that personally changes in 2023. I think this is the year that it all comes together for Tyler Shough. The offensive line for Texas Tech will be improved. You got better wide receivers. You got a deep RB room. Your tight end group is really solid, led by Baylor Cupp, right? But again, the most important aspect of this is simple and plain. This is his second year in Zach Kittley's offense and the first time that he's ever had the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years, and that cannot go understated at the quarterback position. All right, let me know down in the comments below, do you agree or disagree with any of my top 10 most important players for Texas Tech football in 2023? Running from 10 to 1, we got CJ Baskerville at 10, Miles Cole, Steve Linton at 9. Then we got Jerron Bradley at 8, Rusty Stats at 7, Tony Bradford at 6, Rabbit at 5, Josiah Pierre at 4, Jalen Hutchins at 3, Cole Spencer at 2, and then, of course, QB1 and Tyler Shough at number 1. I am RC Maxfield reminding you, if you want the latest Texas Tech football news and rumors and, well, anything in between, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.